I'm going to introduce Georgina, who's going to take us back to some of those traditions and try and put this into context, and then use a case of a patient's de-identified case, to demonstrate how a one-on-one yoga therapy program can benefit cancer patients. Georgina.
Thanks, Judith. As Margie mentioned earlier, yoga was traditionally practiced one-on-one. And it was really only at the beginning of the last century, when people from the West went to India, that classes were developed. And most of you will be familiar with that idea of many people attending a large class with a teacher up the front and everybody following along as best they can. So in yoga therapy, we teach yoga in small groups, but we also teach yoga therapy one-on-one. And this gives us a really good opportunity to tailor and customize the yoga practice so that the individuals get the best benefit. So today I'm going to talk you through a little bit about how we approach a one-on-one session. So I'll just open a short presentation. Let's see. I'll just go back. So I'll just quickly run you through the main tools we have in our kit bag as yoga therapists. And some of these words, of course, are from the Sanskrit. So I've used them here because you might be familiar with them as well. But the main tool, and one that most people are familiar with, is asana, or the body movements in yoga. And then there is pranayama, or the breath work, which are often combined with body movements. And meditation or mindfulness. So you might be aware that there are lots of ways that you can meditate, and yoga has its own system of meditation. And some of the other tools, this isn't a comprehensive list, but we also use chanting and sound or mantras to improve the breath and mental focus. We also use things like nyasam or mudras and gestures, often with the hands, to support and focus attention on different parts of the body. And you might have seen people in yoga with their hands on their heart, or even in a prayer position. And these kinds of gestures can be very powerful ways for people to access parts of themselves in their health journey that are difficult to articulate. And it's really important to say that within each of these tools, we have the ability to modify. And modifications in yoga therapy are really an important part, so that we ensure that people don't move into pain or discomfort. We move in small incremental steps. So we progress a step, stabilize, and then progress further. And that way we see progress over time. So when we meet a person in an interview for yoga therapy, we look at them holistically. One of the models that we use is called the Panchamya, which is looking at the different layers of our being. So kosha or mayas are layers or sheaths. Now in yoga, we always move from the gross to the subtle. And in this model, the first layer is the body, the physical body. And here, when we meet somebody, we might be looking at how they move their body, if they have any injuries, perhaps recent surgery. We might look at whether their skin temperature is equal with their hands and their feet, or even the tone of their skin. So we can pick up a lot of information from that physical body. The next layer in this model is the pranamaya kosha, and here this is the energetic body. In Sanskrit, the word prana means life force or breath. So it animates our mind and our body. And we can draw information from the way somebody is breathing, the way they're speaking, their general demeanor about their energy level. So it's not unusual to meet somebody who has, for instance, had a mastectomy, guarding their chest and breathing into their upper body rather than using the full capacity of their breath. So all of these things contribute to this bigger picture. So now moving into the more subtle levels, Manamaya, which is that mental thoughts and emotions. Some people are much more aware of that than others, but really it's about how we take experiences from the outside world and understand them in our own mind and body. And then the last two, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, much more subtle. Now, Vijnanamaya is about wisdom. Some people talk about it being that deeper personality, but it's a difficult layer to access for many of us. And in fact, in yoga, we access it through meditation and chanting. And then the last layer, Anandamaya, is that bliss state, that transcendental state, which we all aim for. Not commonly available, but some people get glimpses of it in meditation. So how do we apply that approach? So in this summary of a case study, I'll talk you through how we might run the interview. So there are lots of ways to approach yoga therapy with an individual. In this case, we had a 33-year-old young woman who came to me, and her presenting problem, her hayam in Sanskrit, was that she had poor sleep despite fatigue. She felt weak and inflexible, and her energy levels were very low, and she wasn't very motivated. The cause, or the H2 in this case, was daily radiation therapies for lymphoma. So the priorities for this woman were that she wanted to feel stronger and more in control, less dependent. She was exhausted, particularly in the afternoon, but she couldn't nap then. She'd been using some meditation apps to try and help her to sleep, but with limited effectiveness. And she was concerned that the physical discomfort she'd felt in her throat and chest during the radiotherapy was going to worsen in the last rounds. She also commented that her body felt very tight, her hamstrings, her neck. And lastly, she mentioned that it was her birthday the next week, and that was coinciding with her last round of radiotherapy. So you can see here that there are clues already into some things that we might use to help this person develop a daily yoga practice. So on questioning, she was really open and keen to do something doable for herself. She loved dancing and snowboarding and Pilates before she got sick. So she already had a good sense of her body and movement. And she responded really well to encouragement. She had a lot of faith in the health professionals that she'd been working with. So stepping back, she was relieved to be at home, really wanting to take some control herself. She had been drinking lots of water, but her appetite was very poor. Her family and her partner were really supportive, which was so important. And she did already have a space at home where she had her yoga mat laid out. And she also mentioned in conversation she had a ritual that she enjoyed to light a candle in the evening. So again, hints for me that this person would be very open to developing a regular practice. In terms of touch therapy, she had been accessing through the living room massage and reflexology in earlier parts of her treatment, which she found very helpful. So for me, the methods and the tools were using asana and pranayama, the body and the breath movements, to increase energy in her chest, the prana vayu, and in her belly, the apana vayu, which are energy centers, to improve her exhale and to help her with some yoga nidra as a form of meditation and relaxation. Now, this is just a very short summary of the plan that we came up with. But essentially there were 2 short practices, one in the morning and one in the evening, and some things for her to do during the day. So if I jump down to the bottom, during the day, she agreed that she would make herself a fresh juice every day as a start towards some independence. It was liquid, and she knew that her appetite wasn't very good. And she was going to spend some time organising her yoga space with favourite images and sounds. She was also going to start to try and find some time each day to play some music and to move gently to those sounds. So this is a person who was a dancer and got great joy from that before. In the morning practice, there was a very modified and simple asana practice, starting in lying and kneeling into standing. And we used a drishti, which is a focal point on her thumb, to follow the movement with her hand to help release her neck, but also to increase her focus on the movements. In the evening, there was a simple pranayama practice of alternate nostril breathing with, which we call nadi shodhana, followed by relaxation with an eye pillow and a recording of a yoga nidra meditation where we walked through her body and she was visualizing moving energy and prana into her major joints. And lastly, because her birthday was coming up, she decided she was going to buy herself a lovely gratitude journal to help her coming out of her yoga treatment. So this is not an unusual approach. And of course, we follow up after this one-on-one interaction where we customize the practice to help people to follow through and continue to practice. Lastly, there are some testimonials. There are so many, and it's really very wonderful to hear them. Often people talk about connections back into their body and also connections into the group or sangha where they can just let everything down and be themselves in the room. They take off their beanies and, you know, feel very comfortable. The emphasis and learning about breathing and relaxation helps people to calm themselves and feel less anxious. And people also learn about how to manage specific symptoms and side effects like lymphedema. And most say that they wish they had discovered yoga much earlier. So that's it for me. In the classes, of course, we modify more generally. We really encourage the Sangha and yeah, sorry.